looking to buy a new mountain bike for £1,000 or less, you've come to the right place. This is the MBR Hardtail of the Year Test 2023. And this time we've rounded up 8 bikes at 2 different price points, including several brand new title contenders. So this year in the sub £700 category, we've got the Carrera Fury, the Jamis Highpoint A2, the Polygon XTRADA 5, and the Vitus Nucleus 29 VR. And in the £1,000 category, we've got the Calibre Line T327, the On1 Scandal SX, the Vitus Sentier 2.9, and the Voodoo Bizango Pro. So compared to last year, Al, things are looking pretty good.
Yeah, things are great. And actually the biggest change from last year to this year is that all of the bikes in this test are from direct-to-consumer brands.
So effectively, these are brands that retail direct-to-consumer.
Exactly.
Whether that's online or through a shop or both.
Yeah. And the reason for that is because you want to maximize the value on these bikes.
Cool. So should we start kicking off with some of the bikes?
We could start off with the Jamis, the Highpoint A2, which is $650. This bike got a 7 out of 10. And fundamentally, it's a pretty good bike, but the frame's actually really good quality. It's got a really good ride feel to it. It's quite damped, it's not harsh, but it's quite old school. So it's got a steep head angle, it's got a long seat tube, it's kind of got an over the front feel, which means like when you're riding more technical trails, it's not the most inspiring bike.
Okay, so your tall seat tube limits you a little bit with how far your saddle can go down.
And it really limits you on this bike because I think it hits the seat tube hits one of the stops in here. So you actually have to cut. I rode it one time and I had to come back and cut some off the seat tube just to get the seat low enough on it.
And that's important because you need to move around the bike, isn't it?
Exactly. And when the bike's already quite big, you kind of want to get the seat as low as possible.
Yeah. And then the kind of steeper head angle, that's just
you notice it in the steering. You'll even notice it on less technical trails where it's kind of flatter and you're flowing in the front, kind of tuck a little bit more. The steering's a bit more nervous. It kind of doesn't find its own line as easily. It's not as stable. One of the good things in this bike though, it's got a coil sprung fork and it's a little bit oversprung. So even though I'm 80 kilos, I never got full travel out of it, but that kind of holds the front up. So it keeps the bike a little bit more stable than it should be. It's got a great drivetrain. It's got Dior 1x10. With a decent range on the cassette, so you can still kind of like climb up hills and stuff. The tires are pretty good too, and obviously it's 29/29, so the bigger wheels help it kind of roll over the bumps better, and like it wouldn't take much to kind of turn this bike around, because the inherent frame quality is really good, it just needs the shape changing, and I think that's really all that's kind of wrong. There's a couple of little things like,
yeah.
That's kind of
the only bike
that's not the only bike. I mean, internal. So for anybody looking at this, internal cable routing goes in the down tube and out the bottom, and it looks really neat and it cleans the bike up. But if it's not done properly, you get a crazy amount of rattle.
Yeah, and interestingly, they've mixed it. So they've external for the rear brake hose, but the gears and the dropper go through the frame.
So all in all, it'd be a really good bike for someone that just wanted to kind of commute on or do some towpath riding, but as a mountain bike, Jamis got some work to do, not on the quality of the bike, but just on the shape of the bike, so that riders could push it a little bit harder.
And something we've been saying, as long as I can remember, is that doesn't cost anything, does it?
It just requires someone to think about it. So yeah, 7 out of 10, not a bad bike if you're basically looking for, like, I kind of said it's a really good bike for covering miles on because it is comfortable. The saddle's good, the contact points are good, like the frame has nice compliance, the big wheels roll like really efficiently. So and the gearing's really good on it too. So it's a well-spec bike, just needs for like proper mountain biking, the focus needs to shift a little bit.
More of a cruiser than a shredder.
Absolutely.
So bike number 2, we've got the Vitus Nucleus, haven't we? Now
29 VR, so this is the entry-level model.
So how many times has this bike won Hardtail of the Year?
Well, I've lost count. But not this bike. This is the 29er version.
Okay,
previously, all the bikes have been 27.5.
Yeah, and it also didn't win. So what gives?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Well, so basically the bike's still available in both wheel sizes. The bikes look identical. They're the same price, $6,499.99. The only difference is one's got 29-inch wheels, one's got 100mm fork, 27.5 bike's got 120mm fork.
I mean, that's a great option for people, isn't it?
It's a great option. There's a size split too. I think it's medium, large, XL for 29, and then there's 4 sizes in 27.5. So there's a little bit of overlap, but key thing with this bike is it felt a bit dated. And maybe I think the 29er feels more dated than the 27.5 bike. Again, it's a little bit too steep. It's got a really long seat tube on it. The top tube could do with being dropped a little bit. And the 100mm fork, I don't really like super long travel forks on hardtails because you get too big a dynamic swing in the geometry. But 100mm almost seems like too little. I mean, even cross-country racers all use 120mm now. And fork was a little bit sticky. It's a good fork though, because it's got, like, it's air sprung and it's got hydraulic damping that's adjustable, so you can tune it to your rider weight. It just felt really kind of like a little bit sticky and maybe a little bit too progressive. But probably the big sticking point for me on this bike, other than the kind of maybe the geometry being a little bit out of date, was the box 8-speed transmission.
Yeah, no, it's not so much the number of gears, is it? It's the spread of gears.
Yeah, the spread's quite narrow, so you haven't got like as big a range as you get with like a modern cassette where you've got a really big cog on the back. And then you've got, like, because you've got fewer gears, you kind of got big jumps. It just felt kind of clunky. It felt like shifting from maybe like 15 years ago, not modern shifting. So I think that was kind of like the fly in the ointment for me, because when you're climbing and stuff, you could do with a much lower gear, especially if you're new to riding and maybe your fitness isn't really high. You probably want a lower gear so you can keep spinning and get up the climbs. And it just felt a little bit XC for like a brand that's kind of led the way really with progressive hardtails.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think the frame has changed in a few years now, has it? So maybe it's due for an update.
It's definitely due a refresh or an update. I mean, it's got good wheels. They can come tubeless ready. It's got great tires. The nuke-proof kind of bar and stem and stuff all feel really good on it. Even the Clark's brakes feel good. Like, I mean, there's absolutely nothing stand out wrong with it. You're just like, but it's just like when we get to some of the other bikes and you see what they've got in terms of geometry, shape, or I mean, one of the bikes that's coming up next, specifications, unreal. There's just more competition in the category, and you got to keep stepping it up every year, every other year if you want to stay ahead.
Yeah, and particularly this bike's gone up in price as well, hasn't it? So.
Yeah, the entry-level bikes popped up a little bit. So yeah, again, it got the same rating as the Jamis. It got a 7, and there's definitely work for Vitus to do if they want to win Hardtail of the Year again.
Yeah. Well, it's not an easy category to win, is it? So.
It's not, but like they've done it before, and I'm sure they'll come back super strong again.
Yeah.
So
yeah, great. So you said the next bike had an amazing spec.
Yeah.
This is the Carrera, is it? And,
yeah, straight from Halfords.
It does look, I mean, we've got a dropper post, we've got two-piece cranks.
We've got a 1x10 drivetrain.
Yeah.
It's got an air-sprung fork, hydraulic damped, and a 15mm bolt through. It's unreal. It's amazing to have the air-sprung fork because you can adjust it to your rider weight. It's amazing to have the hydraulic damp because you can adjust that to the spring rate. And it's amazing to have a wide range. So it's got an 1146 tooth wide range, 10-speed cassette, Dior cassette. So you've got everything you want. And then they managed to throw a dropper post in. Like, I'd say the dropper post is probably the best mountain bike invention in the last 20 years, isn't it?
I mean, absolutely. As soon as you get on these sort of entry-level hardtails, it really, brings it back home.
Well, the first thing you want to do is put the seat down.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've got a lever on the handlebar. You just push the lever, put your weight on the seat, boom, all the way down, drop into the trail. Your confidence goes through the roof. It's unreal. And
this is not just a sub £1,000 bike. This is a sub £700 bike.
Yeah, this bike costs 600. So it is the most expensive bike in the sub £700 category, but it's 680 pounds. So it's only 30 pounds more expensive. Yeah. It's unreal. And it's almost there. It's the only bike in the category that has 27.5-inch wheels. And you notice them.
Yeah.
You basically notice it when you're climbing and when you're riding kind of like more choppy, rough terrain. The kind of wheel falls into the holes a bit more. It doesn't roll over the bumps quite as well. It doesn't have the same kind of like inertia as the 29-inch wheels. The mistake Carrera's made is that it hasn't really lent into the fact that the smaller wheels are more agile and they're stronger. This bike just needs to be like a little hardcore hardtail. It probably needs about that much chopping. So it's really cool it's got a dropper post because it's also got a really long seat tube. This is the largest size they do of 3. And it's got a 20-inch seat tube, which is massive. If they chopped it down to about there, slackened the head angle by about 3 degrees, it could have been the winner of the test.
Yeah, and again, I mean, that's, this is hardtail geometry has evolved massively over the last 10 years, and you only need to be following it, from a distance to know that
well, you can tell by looking
the ride.
You can tell by looking at the bike. Yeah. You just look at it.
It looks gangly, doesn't it?
It's got a big old tall top tube and a tall seat tube, and
the other thing they haven't lent into is the tire size. So they've got skinny tires, haven't they? Which adds to the skinny tires.
And if you've got smaller wheels, you need bigger tires.
Yeah.
But like if you're buying a bike that you want all mod cons, This bike's got all mod cons.
Yeah.
And that's why it scored higher than the 2 bikes that came before. So I gave this bike an 8 rating. And like I said, you mentioned that geometry is free. If someone at Halfords could just look at the CAD drawings and chop a bit off here and kick the head angle back there, it probably wouldn't cost them. They'd have to retool to make the frame, but it's not like the cost involved in trying to put a dropper seat post on a bike.
No, no.
So yeah, 8 rated bike, pretty good fun, could be so much better though. Bigger tires, better geometry, keep everything else the same. So that just leaves us with one more bike in the category because we had 4 bikes and we're getting to the best bike, and it's the bike that surprised me the most.
Okay, so already we're onto the winning bike.
Yeah.
And I mean, not a brand we've had in the test before, I don't think.
Polygon's new to it. Again, it's another Go Outdoors brand. And if anybody's looking at this and wondering what that is, it's called a front derailleur. And that's why I said I was the most surprised by it, because I took one look at that and basically just kind of face pound. It's like, oh my God, front derailleur. I thought I'd never see one of those again. There are problems with having the front derailleur. The key one is that at the bottom of every rough descent, the chain would be dangling around the bottom bracket and you'd have to stop and put it on again. And like, it was super frustrating because this is by far the best bike, like country mile. So not only does it have a sloping top tube and a short seat tube, it's actually got the slackest head angle. It's also got a tapered head tube. So if you ever wanted to upgrade your fork, you can plug like a modern fork into it. It's also got these like slender seat stays and chunky chain stays. So the chunky chain stays give you the kind of power delivery and the slender seat stays give you a bit of cushioning. It's got a slender 27.2 seat tube. So when you've got your seat up high, and you actually can put your seat up high because your seat tube's not really long, it flexes. So it's really comfortable. And like much as this part makes it look XC, it's got a really short stem, it's got a wide bar, it's got sort of fast 2.2 Maxxis tires on it. Obviously it's 29 front and rear. But the minute you get on it, you just feel like you're in the right place on the bike. Your body weight's in the right place, the handlebars in the right place, your feet relative to your hands feel good, you can manual it, you lean into corners, and then the chain falls off. So it is really frustrating, but my theory on it was, well, you could get rid of the derailleur, you could go single ring, and the cassette still has as wide a range as most of the other cassettes that we've looked at, apart from on the Carrera. So you'd have the same gear range and then the chain wouldn't fall off. Or the actual best solution is they do an XTRADA 6, which comes with an 11-speed drivetrain, a better fork, and that bike costs £700. And that would be the bike to get.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and this bike, like, because the shape's right, it's worth having and worth spending money on to upgrade. Whereas I think some of the other bikes are maybe a little bit more, you kind of ride it until you're kind of sick of it or until it's kind of broken, doesn't work, and then maybe buy a new bike or upgrade the bike completely. Whereas this bike's actually got potential to kind of grow with you. It didn't get a 10 rating, got a 9 because of the derailleur.
Yeah, yeah. And you talked about the seat tube, the 27.2 seat tube. So is it possible to upgrade to a dropper post?
Like maybe like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that'd have been a real pain. But there's a lot of 27.2 seat dropper posts you could just slot straight in there for £100 or whatever, £120.
Okay.
And then also, if you're going to upgrade it, you have to get rid of the derailleur because you want to free up the space where the shifter for the derailleur is underneath the bar to put your dropper post remote. So it kind of all ties in. But really, the XTRADA 6 at £700 could have been in this test, but then this was the bike that was available. This was the bike that we got. So that's the bike that was in the test.
Yeah, yeah. But either way, if you're looking around about 600 to 700, Polygon's a really good place to start looking.
Yeah, because it has the most modern frame platform.
It's so important.
It's the most important thing.
I mean, you can replace this part. Yeah. You can't re-weld the tubes in a different place.
And the thing is, and you feel it too. It's really appreciable in the ride. You just feel your body position. You feel like I took one look at this bike and to be honest, I was like, oh my God, derailleur? What are they thinking? And then I rode it and I was like, actually, it's fast, it's fun, and it's really easy to ride.
Awesome.
And they're the things that you want from any entry-level mountain bike, because this really is, like if this is your first step on your mountain bike journey, you're definitely putting the right foot forward with the Polygon.
Excellent.
So Danny, we're moving on to part 2 of the test, the sub £1,000 category. And I should have made it clear at the start of the video really that I tested all the sub 700 pound bikes, you tested all the sub 1,000 pound bikes. And the reason why we split it like that is because it means one person focuses on 4 bikes to find the best bike in that category. And basically we're not spreading ourselves too thin, so we can actually spend quality time on the bikes.
Yeah, it just gives you time to focus, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, the On1 Scandal SX, due to the drivetrain,
Yeah.
$999.99.
Yeah, yeah.
So one of the really cool things about On1 is that you can pick and choose the components on the frame. You can upgrade
Even
stuff.
at this level? Even on a
At this
1,000
level,
pound bike? Okay.
you can change some of the components at the checkout. So like you can change the tires, you can have fatter 2.5-inch tires, you can go the dropper post.
Which would be a good upgrade on this bike, wouldn't it?
We'll come to that in a minute, yeah, absolutely. So that's a really cool thing. Just means that you save money. You're not paying the full extra on upgrades, you're just paying the difference. So it's an alloy frame, 29-inch wheels, 130mm fork. It's a RockShox Judy Silver. Now, looks like alloy stanchions. Actually, these are steel. So a bit heavy, but didn't really take away much from the performance in terms of how supple they were.
Yeah,
so,
it doesn't, does it?
No, still a really good, smooth ride from the fork, which was kind of in contrast to the frame and the tyres. Okay. So quite skinny, although it says 2.35s, they're pretty skinny tyres and quite a harsh frame. So you really do feel pretty much everything through this bike, especially compared to some of the bikes that we're gonna talk about later. You get fatigued a little bit more easily. You
get rattled around more.
You get rattled around, bounced around. It's much harder to keep your feet on the pedals and your hands. You know, you get white knuckles and stuff on rough descents. So that was one of the big issues with this bike. Another issue with it is it's got quite a tall BB, and so they fitted quite a tall handlebar as well to it.
I mean, when I rode it, I remember thinking you're actually feeling quite a good position. You're high, but you're balanced.
Your hands and your feet are high rather than just like one of them.
Yeah.
But what that does is it just disconnects you from the contact patch of the tyres a little bit. You feel a little bit perched, and so you sort of tiptoe on technical trails. You don't feel like you can really ride it that aggressively, even though some of the angles are quite aggressive, the head angle and stuff. The other thing that sort of lets it down a little bit is the seat tube angle is quite slack. So you're sort of sitting back a little bit more over the back wheel. So
I suppose that's a result too, because your bars are higher and your BB's higher and your seat's higher. So your seat goes up with the BB height to keep your leg length without getting too complicated. You're higher basically. So and because it's declined, it brings you more rearward. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
And then so on the kind of steeper climbs, you're just sort of fighting to keep the front wheel down and to keep traction over the back wheel. So it's not the best sort of technical climber. It's kind of okay on smoothish trails, but when it gets loose, again, you get that sort of disconnected feel. But it comes with a dropper post. Comes with like a good drivetrain, 1x drivetrain, SRAM SX, really wide ratios at the back.
Level brakes.
Really nice brakes. One thing with the dropper post is that the lever actually snapped. It's like a plastic dropper remote lever. Yeah. Well, actually the whole thing has snapped there on literally the first ride, so that wasn't great.
It still functioned though.
Still functions, but obviously you'd want to have to replace that at some point. So it scored an 8, and I think, again, like we've been talking about earlier, a couple of geometry tweaks would really help the rating and the performance of this bike. But really like the fact that you can customize it. It's a good basis for building on.
There was one other bugbear with this bike though, wasn't there?
Yeah,
pretty standard one.
Looks real clean with the internal cable routing, but constant rattle.
Yeah, it's pretty annoying, especially like on a hardtail. There's so much more things to rattle anyway.
Yeah.
Like that needs chainstay protection too. In fact, I can feel the chips on the paint just there. So yeah, a little bit of polishing it needs, doesn't it, just to kind of bump up the rating a little bit.
Absolutely.
So Danny, this is the Vitus Sentier 2.9, pretty much a regular to the hardtail that you're testing in the sub 1,000 pound category.
Familiar bike, yeah.
Much different to the one we tested last time round?
No, there's a couple of little tweaks. I think there's a different back tyre.
Yeah.
It's got a knobby nick instead of
Damp. It was before, yes. Kind of same Schwalbe, soft rubber though on the front, and it's like
it's got a Dior cassette instead of I think a Sunrace last year.
Yeah. So shifting's improved.
Yeah. But apart from that, I think the frame's the same. That's the important part. It's the fork is the same, and mostly the takeaways from last year are the same as well. So it's a really nice frame. So although this looks like the one we had on the stand a little bit earlier, it's actually a butted frame rather than plain gauge. So a little bit lighter, but also a nicer ride feel.
A bit more compliant.
And that nicer ride feel is kind of amplified by these tyres. The Schwalbe tyres are really, really good. Yeah. And we can't kind of highlight enough how much of a performance gain these bring to these bikes. Because it's comfort, it's control, it's grip, it's kind of confidence, everything.
And it's a cost.
Yeah, these are not cheap.
They're proper high-end tyres. They're not cheap tyres. So there's definitely a cost to be had to put these tyres on this bike.
Yeah, but that pays off in terms of the ride performance. So another big difference from the bike we had on the stand earlier is this is a 130mm travel fork instead of 100mm. Yeah. Again, like the on one, it's got the steel stanchions. But again, really nice and supple. Yeah. Good grip. It's got good cockpit, bars, stem, everything. It puts you in a really commanding riding position. No dropper post on this bike. 2 bikes in this category had dropper posts. This one didn't. Although, if when you're buying this on Chain Reaction, you can pop one in your basket for about 100 quid. So it's not the end of the world. It's got Clark's brakes. I think we complained about these last year being a bit sticky and you had to really pull on them. But
these ones felt better.
These ones are big improvement.
I think even when you bring the reach of the lever in a little bit, it kind of stops them feeling so wooden too. You get a little bit softer feel to the levers. So I thought they were more impressive than, I think it's the same brake, but definitely more impressive than the ones we've had in the past. Just looking at this bike, it's bolt through front and rear.
Yeah, that's another difference.
That's a big difference between the sub 700 pound bikes and the 1,000 pound bikes, as they go to boost spacing and bolt through front and rear.
So with a 29-inch wheel, that means you're getting a stronger wheel, as well as the security of the frame, the stiffness of the frame. So same as the Nucleus, in that there's 2 wheel size options people can choose. And it's split by sizing, so the 29 is kind of more at the larger end of the offering, whereas the 27.5 sort of covers the whole range. Yeah.
Fundamentally, it's a really good bike, though, isn't it?
Absolutely. It rides real nice. It's got a lovely kind of smooth ride. It feels like a quality frame. Yeah. You can ride it pretty aggressively as well. It's just, again, a bit like the Nucleus. It needs a little bit of a freshen up, a little bit of an update. So like a slightly longer reach. A smaller seat tube, a shorter seat tube, just to give you more standover, and just make it a bit more contemporary. But
still fundamentally,
it's a great bike, really bike. Which is why we gave it a 9 out of 10 again. So definitely recommended.
Okay, so we're into the double-digit ratings. The Voodoo Bizango Pro. Now, I still remember going on the launch of the original Bizango. I don't think any of the other journalists got it, because none of them test 600 pound bikes. It's like, you know what I mean? They all ride like Gucci bikes. And I was like, this bike's amazing, this bike's so good, this is gonna be a game changer. And it absolutely was a game changer. So it's really cool to see like Halford's build on the Bizango brand and the model and bring out the Pro version. So like it's instead of it being like I think the price fluctuated on the old one between 750 and 600, and it kind of moved around a bit. But now they've got 2 tiers, haven't they?
Yeah, I think, and there's also the Bragg as well, which is the same frame, which is even a bit cheaper. Yeah. But I was looking at this is the 10th year now that we've been doing the Hardtail of the Year test, and guess which bike won the 600 pound category in 2013? It was the Bizango.
Of course, absolutely. It was a great bike.
10 out of 10, and I don't think it's ever scored less than 10 out of 10.
Yeah, well, the thing is, they nailed it.
I would say, like, if you're looking to buy a hardtail that you want to maybe cover some big rides on, if you want to maybe even do some gravel type stuff, if you want to do an XC race, this is like its bread and butter. It's absolutely perfect for that kind of riding. You can still ride it hard as well. Yeah. Maybe not quite as hard as the bike we'll come to next, but as a kind of mountain bike for going out on adventures and exploring.
It's really versatile, isn't it?
Yeah, superb. So I mean, a few of the highlights, I mean, we will start at the front here. It's right next to me. That's got a RockShox 35 fork. It's the only bike in the whole test that's got a 35mm stanchion fork.
So what does that mean to someone that's not like familiar with all the fork sizing?
Well, you're getting larger diameter upper tubes,
Yeah.
which is basically increasing the stiffness.
Yeah.
It also means you get more air volume and oil volume potentially
Yeah.
inside the fork. So that means better damping, better
spring
spring.
curve. Yeah.
You can also upgrade it as well, so you could drop in a more sophisticated damper if you wanted to upgrade
it. Gets you to a level, doesn't it, where it kind of opens up.
You can tune the spring with volume spacers, which you can't kind of on the cheaper forks. So there's lots of good points about this fork. You know, if we start working our way back, it's a really nice alloy frame. It rides pretty comfortably. It's not the most contemporary geometry, but it's good enough, you know. There's a decent size range. You feel like you're in a good position for riding at pace and covering ground. External cable routing, so we haven't got any issues with cables rattling, and they're really accessible when you need to maintain them and stuff. The tyres are, you know, top brand Maxxis tyres. We've got a pretty grippy High Roller 2 on the front, and then a Recon on the back. What I would suggest with this bike is that you could maybe put this High Roller on the back and put a fatter tyre on the front. Just
because the High Roller's got like it's a C3, it's a Max Terra compound, so it's a softer compound than the rear tyre, so there's more grip and more cushioning from it.
Yeah, so if you put a bigger volume front tyre on, you're going to get more comfortable ride and more grip as well, without really sacrificing any rolling resistance. It's got a real good Shimano drivetrain, super wide range cassette.
Yeah, it's got the full gamut on the rear, isn't it? So
right
so you can keep your legs spinning and keep climbing, and it's great.
That's right. Yeah. Right up to a 51. So yeah, you can keep the RPMs high, and you don't that muscle fatigue doesn't set in so quickly. Good Shimano brakes as well. Like we really like these brakes. They're 4-finger levers, but you only need to use one finger.
And they're serviceable. People will work on your bike. If you have a problem, they won't just ask you to take them off and replace them with those
super reliable as well.
Yeah,
they don't need much fettling. A good cockpit setup, 780 bar, short stem. You can ride it fast downhill, but again, some slightly bigger volume tires would really help.
It depends on your bias, really, doesn't it, on what you want to do on it. And the bike we're going to get to next, I think that's really where like our bias lies, really, and what we were capable of doing on it. And I think there's like, it was our winner last year, so it's hardly surprising that it's back with another, like, I think it's exactly the same.
Exactly the same spec and everything. I think it's just £25 more expensive, which is pretty amazing considering everything that's kind of gone up in the world.
And it's got routing for a dropper post. I mean, a dropper post is something you want to put on it. And maybe too, even if this bike had a dropper post as standard, it kind of might have opened up its riding potential a little bit more. Just where, like, I get lazy with it. I'm like, I end up putting the seat kind of in a mid setting, which is kind of not quite right for pedaling, not too high for descending, and then you kind of just suck it up.
Sort of worst of both worlds.
Yeah. Because also the quick releases, they get gunked up real quick, and then the whole thing gets gritty. So, like, can't emphasize enough. Dropper post does sound like a remote control for your TV, but you totally want it. It's like, you know what I mean? It's
absolutely.
Like, so if Voodoo wanted to take the Bizango Pro to the next level, what would you be looking at?
Well, aside from a dropper post, I would want to fit some larger volume tyres, drop the seat tube a little bit. I know we sound like a broken record here.
Well, but it's a standard problem.
They could stretch the reach out a little bit. It's not tiny, this bike, by any means, but with the bike we've got coming up is almost like a size bigger in terms of reach. So, and I should just point out before we go, this got 10 out of 10 again. Yeah. So, it's pretty much there.
Does the next bike get an 11?
It should do.
Totally. Well, let's get to it. Now, Danny, Calibre is no stranger to building good entry-level bikes, but it's never really nailed the hardtail until now.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see the brand back. They've been away for a little while. I don't think they've really played in this kind of price point before. But yeah, I mean, straight in at number one.
So what model is it?
The Line T327. 27 obviously being the wheel size.
But hold on a second. There's something funny about the wheels.
Yeah. You remember, what was it, 5-6 years ago?
We were all really excited about plus-size tires. Yeah. Well, I'm still excited about plus-size tires.
When it's on a hardtail, like it's amazing, isn't it? The difference they make. Just having that that extra air volume, that extra kind of cushioning. I mean, when you don't have a suspension at the back, this is your suspension.
Yeah,
and,
you want all the millimeters you can get right here.
Yeah, you don't need to worry so much about what line you're on. You're not looking for the billiard table little
or riding
sections.
Around every route.
You're not getting you know, you can actually see because your eyes aren't running out of your skull.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So yeah, this is one of the big advantages of this bike, but it's the whole package really has come together. Everything they've done with this bike is right. So they've got a slacker handle, they've got a longer reach. So this is a medium actually. Every other bike we've got here is a large. Yeah. But the reach is basically the same. So you know,
so
it gives you options.
There's definitely potential for taller riders to go like bigger and have like a really long stable bike. And what's really cool is that the one thing we've been complaining about on all the bikes, this one's nailed it. Yeah,
short seat tube. So you know, you've got that lots of standover. You can really kind of move the bike around in the corners. It's got a steep seat tube angle as well, so you're not too far over the back on the climbs. And you know, those fat tires give you tons of grip.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing I really noticed when I rode the bikes back to back with you, was that on the sub 1,000-pound 29er bikes, you're kind of picking your way and you have to balance, and you need actually quite a bit of skill to navigate a climb on a bike with skinny tires. And with this thing, you just kind of sat there and chatted, and as long as you could keep the pedals turning, the bike just kept going forward. Yeah,
I mean, we're not even talking about a technical climb here. We're just talking about.
It's just had a few rocks and a bit
of rocks, and you're where you're sitting down, your bum is basically really stable on this bike, whereas on the other bikes you're just getting the whole time, and that really adds up to, you know, kind of energy levels and speed. The only place I noticed it being a bit of a drag, literally, was on the road, where it felt a bit slower than the other bikes. But you know, I don't buy this bike to ride on the road. This is a bike for proper mountain biking. You know, it's not really a dual-purpose commuter / mountain bike. Like
no, it's a hardcore. It's a sub 1,000-pound hardcore hardtail.
Yeah, totally. You know, again, we got a dropper post there. We've got a high-quality KS dropper post, and a metal remote, you know, an alloy remote. So it's not going to snap on you. It's got external cable routing like the Voodoo. So again, but these are all clamped in place. There's no rattle. You can get at them if you need to maintain them. It still looks pretty clean, but you haven't got that frame rattle, which is super annoying. It's got little mod cons like the gear strap mount there, so you can put a tube,
second water bottle there if you want, or a tool and a tube,
which is cool.
It's a really well thought out bike, isn't it?
Really well thought out. 1,000 pounds on the nose. You know, take it out off the shop floor, straight to your local woods or whatever, your little riding spot, and you can go as hard as anyone can, really.
We've also got 11-speed SRAM drivetrain on here.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Pretty good. It's not quite as wide range as the Voodoo, not quite as slick shifting as the Voodoo, but I'd be happy to sacrifice a bit of that for all of the other kind of performance benefits. You know, the extra control, comfort, all those things that comes with the bigger tires, the frame geometry, etc.
So yeah, Calibre's nailed it. So although this got a 10 and the Voodoo got a 10, this was our hardtail of the year 2023 in the sub 1,000-pound category. Yeah,
we didn't want to sit on the fence. We wanted to say, okay, if you've got 1,000 pounds, this is the bike to get. And I think that's definitely true if you want a more hardcore mountain bike experience. If you want to do the kind of ground covering, the XC type riding, Voodoo's amazing.
Really good,
But for you know, the kind of riding we love doing, this is the bike that we would get every time.
Totally. I mean, and I think it's like such a good entry to mountain biking. If this is your first mountain bike, you're gonna fall in love with the sport.
Yeah.
Because it's the bike isn't the limiter.
And I got to say that, you know, there's a lot of comments about the bike industry kind of just raising prices, just going crazy. Everything is too expensive. That's absolutely true. There is just some ridiculous bikes out there.
14, 15 grand mountain e-bikes.
Absolutely.
Totally.
But, you know, where at the entry level, you know, where people are coming into the sport, I look at this bike and I look at what we were testing 10 years ago.
It's amazing.
The geometry, the components, everything about this bike is night and day better than 10 years ago.
Totally.
So I think, you know, hats off to brands like Calibre, brands like Voodoo, brands like Vitus. They are doing an amazing job.
I spoke to the team at Calibre about this bike, and what was really interesting is they're doing like bottom-up development. They're not kind of building a high-end bike and then stripping it back to make a cheaper bike. They're out there testing all the cheap tires, all the cheaper parts, and trying to find like the kind of rough diamond to put on their bike, and they've done a killer job.
Yeah.
Right now, if you want to get a hardtail, if you've got £1,000 to spend, this is the bike to get.
So I hope you found the video interesting and informative. And if you've got any of these bikes you've been looking to buy an entry-level hardtail, please leave a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.